technology and comparing two pieces of technology, it's not exactly a very straightforward answer. You can actually say go for this over this, because there's always one thing that will always tip the typical user to one over the other, and it happens in reverse directions. So it's actually very hard when you're making these comparison videos to say go for this phone over this phone. And the case is the same for this Tecno Spark 6 and Infinix Hot 10. Now, these two phones are in all senses the same phone, but they have some differences. But let's actually look into the spec sheet. Now, the Tecno Spark 6 has a 6.8-inch IPS LCD screen, has a configuration of 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage, has a 5000 mAh battery, has a MediaTek Helio G70, has a 720p display, has a 16 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel selfie camera, still uses micro USB, and all of these specs still translate all the way over to the Infinix Hot 10, which has a 6.8-inch screen, actually 6.78 inches. Also has a configuration of 4 by 64, has a 5200 mAh battery, has a MediaTek Helio G70 as well, also has a 720p screen, and a 16 megapixel main camera with an 8 megapixel selfie camera, and is still using micro USB. Now, the differences between these two phones are not much, like you could clearly see from the spec sheet, but there are actually a few differences between them. The first one being the battery. Now, the Tecno Spark 6 has a 5000 mAh battery as opposed to the 5200 that the Infinix Hot 10 has. This should give it some bonus points against the Tecno Spark 6, but the Tecno Spark 6 makes up for the lack of that 200 mAh with 18 watts fast charging, which makes things very easy for people, especially power users. That means you can charge up your phone in just over 2 hours, about 2 hours and a few minutes. That has been my experience with the Mini F1, which I had before as my main device. Another difference is the configurations that you get with this phone. Now, the Tecno Spark 6 comes with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage as the only spec, whereas the Infinix Hot 10 comes with 3 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage, 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage, up to 128 gigs of internal storage with 6 gigs of RAM. Other differences include the design. Now, the Tecno Spark 6's design is actually a design that I admire. The circular camera module at the back looks very different. It's somewhat a copy of what you get on a Nokia phone, but it's still different and much better than a camera rectangle, in my opinion. But then the Infinix Hot 10 comes with a camera rectangle. For those of you who like the camera rectangle more, that will probably be your best bet. The fact that they have fingerprint readers on the back and not the side is a bit appalling for me. I don't like that, but I'm not complaining either. But then all these things aside, which would I actually get if I were in the market? Now, I like the fact that the Tecno Spark 6 has 18 watts fast charging. That has tipped me one side. But then the fact that it has only 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM in 2020 is not acceptable. 4 gigs of RAM is just not enough to run the Android operating system, especially with Android 11 that just came out. Sure, it's going to be more optimized for hardware, but more RAM still means better performance, and it doesn't have this. Now, Infinix Hot 10 has 3 gigs of RAM, which I find absolutely stupid, and also has up to 6 gigs of RAM. But then the 6 gig RAM variant will, of course, have added cost a lot. So if you compare the 4 gig RAM variant of the Tecno Spark 6 to the 4 gig RAM variant of the Infinix Hot 10, they're practically the same phone, it now becomes a bit of a toss-up. I like the variability of the Infinix Hot 10, but I think personally that I'm going to go with the Tecno Spark 6 for 3 reasons. Like I've said before, I like the battery, especially the fast charging. I like the design, the circular camera module, and I love the larger screen. But then, even though we're looking at these two phones now, let's actually take a step back. A little while ago, Xiaomi released the Redmi 9, and sure, it's more costly than these two phones, but then it's just a tiny bit more expensive. And for that, you're getting a lot more food for your money. Now, let's take for instance that you're a photography lover. You want cameras that can perform at close to flagship grade or indistinguishable from flagship grade. The Redmi 9 will provide that. You want a phone that performs very, very well. The Redmi 9 will still provide that with MediaTek Helio G80. You want a battery that you have confidence in. The Redmi 9 still has a 5020 mAh battery. And it also has a USB Type-C port, as opposed to the micro USB that you get on these two phones. Really, they've been one-upped by Xiaomi here. And if you're in the market and you're not on a very tight schedule, I'll tell you to save up a bit more money and get the Redmi 9, because that phone is a much better buy for you. But let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.